What's up, YouTube, and welcome back to Detox Proxy. Back in the summer, I ordered 4 different analogs of LSD, and I only tried one of them. It was 1P-LSD. It was a moderate trip, nothing too intense. But since I've had a little bit of time off work and been feeling really good, I decided I would go ahead and try 1V-LSD, which is also known as Valerie. Now, firstly, I just kind of want to start this off by saying, although there is a lot of health research and mental health research surrounding psychedelics, they are still considerably dangerous. You can really push that barrier and cross that line by doing too much of them too frequently and really cause some harm to yourself. Now, prior to me trying any of these analogs or even ordering them for that matter, I do a lot of research on them. I like to read reviews and trip reports to see what type of experiences people are having, just so I can kind of determine what kind of experience I might have. The problem with the analogs is there's not a lot of reviews and there's not a lot of trip reports out there. Especially this 1V-LSD, I found that it seems to be primarily used in Europe, Germany being the main one for most of the reviews I came across were in German and they actually need to be translated. And then as I got further into their video, I realized that they're talking more about the legalities of these analog psychedelics opposed to the actual substance itself. Now, I had planned for about an 8 or 9 hour trip and was wandering around the house kind of looking for things to do, cleaning up a little bit here and there. But what really started to take over was, or what I first started to feel was the amount of body load. Just the weight of my body being difficult to move around, quickly losing motivation to do anything. And I decided at that time it was just time to seek haven on the couch and grab some water, grab blankets, turn on the TV and kind of just ride out the first little bit of the trip just to see what it felt like and where it was going. Now, I really found the amount of body load to be humorous in the beginning because I had turned the TV on with the remote, but I wanted to control the TV with just, my old phone, casting which videos I wanted to watch. So I went to get up to go look for the phone, and I was like already like, oh, and I just the amount of like head block and stuff that was already starting to happen, I was kind of taken at that point that I was starting to laugh to myself and laugh at myself and basically saying to myself, like, you're already so high you can't even get up to get your phone. That just being about an hour in. Now, exceeding past that point, and it's probably just because I wasn't moving very much, but my temperature really started to fluctuate like heavily from the extremities of my bodies, from my toes and fingers and feet and hands, being extremely cold, to my face sweating. So I was getting a lot of hot and cold all over too. Like my glands were just out of control. So I just kind of knew to get bundled up and use the extra blankets, even though it felt like my face was sweating. And I don't know, it may have been damp, but it certainly wasn't like really hot. And I don't think the other parts of my body were that cold. The time exceeding about an hour and a half, the trip really started to take off. The amount of body load that I was feeling was very intense. I had gotten to the point where I wasn't moving at all. The amount of sedation that I was going through was extremely heavy. My headspace had closed right up, and basically just grabbing my phone to like look for new videos is all I could do in that span of time. I had an extremely apprehensive and very nervous type of feeling, like something was about to happen, and I couldn't get beyond that. No matter what I told myself, like, man, you're just sitting in your home watching videos on TV, and I just couldn't get my mind to relax my body. I was extremely tensed up, and I usually am. I'm quite a tense person, but to be restricted from movement because you're so tense, that's the way I was actually feeling at the time. I was starting to get like this kind of dirty feeling out of the LSD, like maybe it was just the amount of syntheticness to it or something like that. But it's as if like Valerie was this, came off as this international model and turned out to be just a chimp wearing a fancy wig and lipstick or something like that. And it was at that point where I decided that the 1V-LSD was certainly stronger than the 1P-LSD. Now, mind you, that the dosages are different. The 1P-LSD is a 100 microgram dose, and the 1V-LSD is 150 microgram dose. Now, at the 3 hour mark is when I really started to get some visuals starting. My peripheral vision had really closed in quite a bit, but it seemed like the edges of it had completely blurred out. And I was starting, not like a tunnel vision, but I was kind of forced to only see what was ahead of me. And I really couldn't make sense of what was on the sides. And just the lights flickering in from the windows or whatever, and the shadows, all that stuff really started to play with me quite a bit on my peripheral vision, to the point where I'd like have to look over to see what was going on over there. Oh yeah, it's nothing. Okay. And a lot of that was happening. It was at the point where I just had to start ignoring stuff. Because I was really like just playing videos on the screen, I'd really dialed into the TV. And during that time, I guess with the extra blurring going on the sides, that a lot of the images on the TV started to become three-dimensional and really jump out of the television, especially things in the forefront, like people showing stuff and that type of thing, would really bounce out from the background of the video and almost like off the television. Another thing I remember was I had been vaping and maybe smoked a joint or two. I wasn't actually really vaping or smoking a lot, and I think it was just because of the amount of tension I was going through. That amount of vape and smoke that had hazed in the air had taken this really crazy layered effect. So of course it is three-dimensional, it's in a three-dimensional space, but the layering that was, it's almost as if it had become two-dimensional and taking picture after picture, laying them over on top of another, one on top of the other, and literally looking through all of that in kind of very, very strange visual. So even though the trip had kind of started heading in that direction, I still tried to keep my senses. I got up, used the washroom, and on the way back, I decided, well, I'll grab a banana and get a little something in my stomach. It's got to be late. I sat back down and kind of thought about the time, because it was dark outside, and figured it'd be probably around 10 p.m. or so. So that, you know, I was thinking, even though it still felt like the trip was quite intense, I figured it should be, you know, coming to an end shortly. And then I decided I would actually check the time. It was only 5 o'clock. And I'm like, oh no, I'm only like halfway through this and maybe at the climax right now. And that's when things really started to roll quickly, and maybe got a little too intense at some times. I was pretty shocked about the amount of time dilation that I experienced. So it was right at that point I decided, no, I got to start taking some notes about this. This is wild. This is crazy. As I started taking some notes and trying to describe those first few hours of the trip so that I could make this video, my mind started to roll. It started to go into past, present, future, and thinking about just everything that's going on in my life, everything that's happened, where I see myself going. And it kind of continued on like that. Really took me into a mind warp at that point. I had gotten emotional and started crying. I don't remember exactly what triggered it. I do remember thinking things along the lines of self-improvement and trying to, you know, get this done and do this so I can get that there, and that sort of thing. It really played with my mind a little bit for a while, and as I kind of came out of it, I decided, well, I'll make a little video clip at least to throw into this video. So I'm still kind of coming down out of this trip, and I just decided, well, I'll grab the phone and turn it on. Got a lot of stuff to think about. Or I did think about a lot of stuff. Shed quite a few tears this time. but got some stuff figured out, I think. Now, it was still before the 7-hour mark of the trip when I recorded that little clip sitting here on the couch, and probably around that point, I could tell I was through the climax of the trip. Maybe that's why I was so emotional. So even at the 7-8 hour mark, I was still getting some visual effects. I had cleared up a lot of the headspace and the sedation, so I was able to get up and start moving around the house quite a bit. And I was coming back from the washroom, and as I came into the room, the light from the TV had this illuminated this glow in the room. And as I entered the room, that glow kind of like shimmered from dim to bright, going like shaking, like a shimmering shake. And it wasn't the TV that was doing it. It had basically a solid image on the screen, and it was just that maybe the way I walked into the room, but it was the glow of the light in the room that was doing the shake. So I thought that was pretty neat. I sat down, and I had my old phone to my left of me because I was casting videos from the phone, and the screen was on, but in my peripheral vision, I kept on seeing the screen on the phone flip from like vertical to horizontal back to vertical. And not that the phone can't do that, but I was like, is the phone doing that? And I would look down over at the phone, and sure enough, it wasn't doing anything. Now, as the trip comes to an end, I can finally start to relax. And it's actually the most relaxing points of my life because I live with a lot of hypertension, and being, strung out in those type of situations, coming to the end of them, I just like Play-Doh and Jello after that. It feels very good. That was probably one of my longest trips, if not the longest. It was definitely close to 12 hours. I've taken LSD before where I know it's been close to that mark, but I don't think about that long. Now, from my experience, 1V-LSD is a lot like regular LSD. I can't determine if the reason it's so effective is because it's just lab grade, or if it's because it's a variant and it's just that much different. Obviously, it being a 150 microgram dose is, considerable difference to a 100 microgram dose. So you kind of have to take that into account when you're talking about these analogs. Be sure of the amount before you're taking it. You could be taking 2 or 3 tabs of something, thinking you're at 200 or 300 micrograms of LSD, and it actually be like closer to 500, and that would be an adventure to go on. In comparison to 1P-LSD, that could be the variable right there, is just the dosage amount, 100 to 150. But the 1V-LSD was certainly stronger. It was certainly a much more intense trip than the 1P. It's almost to the point, if you were taking it your first time, you could probably cut that tab in half and take half the tab, and at least get to know whether you want to take the other half or try a full tab at another time. Now, in the past, I've taken 400 micrograms of LSD, and yes, it was a very intense trip, but I don't think I could pull off the same thing with 1V-LSD. 1 tab, sure, 2 probably, 3 maybe, but getting to 3 to 4 tabs of this stuff might open doors, and I might have never been down that avenue before, so I really don't know what to expect. The temperature fluctuation was very strange this time around, and I don't know if that would intensify with more of it, but that was probably the weirdest effect that I discovered. Now, after that 1V-LSD trip, I don't have any other trips planned for the next little while. Not that I've been put off or it was a bad trip or anything like that. It's just there's other things that I want to prioritize. And even that following day after the trip, I went rampant through my house cleaning up stuff and doing laundry and just the stuff that goes through your head when you're on psychedelics. So there will be some new videos coming. I have a couple topics that I'd like to talk about. Probably going to put one of those videos next. But if you liked this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here and you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button for me. Leave your questions and comments further down below. And I'll see you in the next one.